Hey everyone, back at it. Got the refrigerator in place. I'll show you how I'm gonna start the framing. I'll show you this refrigerator. It's actually pretty neat, little design flaw that I ran into. But today I'm gonna start framing it out. So stay tuned. Here's the fridge and the drawer chest in position. This is exactly how it's going to sit. I've got it sitting on starboard or plastic boards. There's 3 of them for the fridge and 2 for the little chest over there. And this will provide enough of an air gap, you can see right there under it, to, it's stainless steel, it's not going to corrode, but any moisture, you want ventilation all the way around it. This little area here, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with the space between the cabinet and the top of the fridge. I could raise this so that it's level with the fridge and have the space on the bottom. That would be the traditional cabinet way of doing things. What I think I'm going to do though is I bought little stainless steel outlets, rectangular switch and outlet covers. I think what I might do is put 2 switches here, one for the disposal, one for the under cabinet lighting, and then one here, either a future switch or in the meantime, possibly just an outlet if I ever wanted to plug in anything. I don't think I'm going to put outlets up around here. I don't think there's enough room, and I don't anticipate having a need for that, to be honest with you. If anything, I would want an outlet in this center thing that we build here, in which case I'd have to pull up the pavers and run a wire under the pavers, which I may or may not do. But in the meantime, we're going to start framing. We need a frame around the fridge and the chest. It needs to be 54 inches wide, 10 1/4 inches deep, and 10 1/4 inches high and 23 inches deep. So we're going to be mindful of that because we want that centered over the refrigerator and the cabinet. It'll be centered right over that space. This is, I think I measured it last night. I think it's like 60 something inches. Let's find out here real quick. The end. This is about 62, and all I need is 54. So I'll have to just mark the middle and measure out from there. There are very few parts that we're going to use to put this whole thing together. These I got from Home Depot. They are aluminum tubes. They're the same thing that's used to put the screens together. And then there's this bracket that we'll use, which bolts into the concrete, and then you send 2 screws into the side of the beam, like that. And then there's another connector when you connect one box beam to the other. Go ahead and put that there, and that's these. You use a ton of these. 1 on each side, like that. And then 4 screws. These are self-tapping screws that are actually pretty simple to install. The problem that I anticipate is they want to move around a little bit. So you do, it's not forgiving like wood, and it has to be exact. And when they do move around a little bit, you have to dismantle it and cut it to get it to be level. At least that's my experience. And then this is just regular Tapcon that would go right into the concrete, and you would use the same 2 screws here to screw in there, and that would secure it to the wall or the floor depending on where you want to attach it. That's it. That's all of the parts for the entire thing. Just a bunch of cuts and a bunch of little brackets and screws. This is how they come. bags of screws, bags of tack cons, bags of the heavier connectors or L brackets, and then the other stuff just comes in the same bags. This is all electrical. Went ahead and bought that. It's just, I'm keeping it inside here until I'm ready to use it. So it took me a little while to get going. You know, you stand there, look at it. I don't have a drawing. And this is just how I build things. Just slowly, make some cuts. Unfortunately, I have to do stuff a couple times to get it right, but it's just the way that I need to process through. It's actually pretty therapeutic. Takes way longer than something that you would draw out and know exactly what you're doing. But most of the problem is I just don't really know the design that I want until it starts to take shape. So anyway, a regular saw. I have a Milwaukee 18-volt miter saw. Worked really well. It's just the stock blade that came with it. Cuts right through this stuff. Super easy. And it was just a constant back and forth of measuring because I'm trying to keep the overall height as low as possible. The slope on the pavers there is really extreme, more so than I really thought it was. There's about 1.5 inches of concrete on the right, and there's over 4 inches of concrete on the left. And it really makes a difference when you have a level countertop and you're standing either at the sink, the sink is potentially too low, and the side burner is potentially too high. At the end of this episode, I kind of realized that, but I didn't know that until I got through this whole process of cutting this out. So really what I'm doing is trying to end up with the lowest possible height, having that refrigerator in there, and enough spacing to get 2 pieces of 1/4-inch concrete board and the insulation in between that main deck, right above the fridge. This area that I'm framing out here is where the grill will slide in, and that back bar is where the granite will sit. So this is pretty much the finished frame height. And because my slab isn't perfectly level, that wall isn't perfectly straight, there's just a lot of back and forth. So once I got that left side there screwed together with the brackets and the screws that I showed you earlier, I flipped the thing over so I could, fit in there and screw in those legs. It starts raining. I mean, it's Florida, so you got to bring all the tools in and back and forth with the tools. But here I am finishing up all of the brackets. So I put a bracket everywhere I could put a bracket. And what it did was it made it super sturdy. The thing is just rock solid. I'm really shocked. I mean, I guess I shouldn't be, right, because the screen enclosure is rock solid. But I'm just amazed how, 4 little screws in a corner, or really both sides of where a beam meets perpendicular to another beam, it makes it so solid. It's just incredible. So I go through, screw all of this together, put in all the support beams, and then start measuring the concrete board. My experience marking it is it eats through pencils. Sharpies doesn't like concrete board. And marking it with blue masking tape just is the best, in my opinion. Just take a piece of blue masking tape and just put it down the entire strip where you want to cut it, and then cut along the masking tape. Anyway, I used the same little fasteners that the L brackets use to connect the concrete board to the framing. And this is going to be upside down, so I put more than I probably needed. Here I went ahead and finished all of the L brackets and put in these additional braces. Just easier to do it while the component, or while this piece was out of the area where the fridge is, because the fridge is so heavy I can't move it around by myself. Anyway, it fit very well. However, it came out of square or out of level because the concrete board either potentially twisted it, or I'm not really sure, what exactly happened. But like I said earlier, when you screw in these pieces of aluminum, the screws cause the brackets to shift around a little bit, and it just gets it slightly out of square. So you have to, bend it, or, just muscle it square again. And then once you get it where you want it, bolt it into the wall, like I'm doing right there. And then down here, I put a spacer in. What I did was I cut just a little bit of that box beam. You can see them there. And I slid the box beam little pieces underneath to square it up as shims before I bolted it into the floor, or tapconned it into the floor. What I'm doing here is bolting the two walls of the cabinet down into the floor and shimming it to get everything level again. And unfortunately, the set of drawers would not slide in with the bolts for the brackets that bolt into the base. So I had to actually take those out later. And what I'll do, see that little L bracket on the right? I'll have to move that over to the other side because there's nothing in there. That's where the sink goes. And I'll have to square that up that way. And then same with the bracket on the left side of that opening. I'll have to move that one to the other side where the fridge is, and there's enough of a gap on the fridge side that it won't interfere. But it did cause the chest to not be able to be slid in. That's how tight the tolerances are, the way I'm building it. Probably could have gone a little wider here. Anyway, here I'm putting the frame back together where the grill will slide in. And I ended up having to actually cut a few pieces here. I think what I did was when I built the rest of the frame for the base, I used some of the little pieces that I had staged for this. So I ended up having to really almost rebuild it. And that's why there's all these measurements, and I'm standing there looking at it, trying to figure out what the heck happened to the pieces, because I had pre-cut all this stuff. Here's a quick view before I put the insulation in here and then top it with the concrete board. You can see how uneven the wall is. I can stick my finger back here and it touches over here. So I'm making it square, not following the wall, and we'll just make up for that with the granite at the end. You'll never see it. This thing is unbelievably solid. I mean, it's like very, very solid. It's bolted in. I'm going to bolt it in a few more places, but bolted in. I also had to correct for some squareness down here, but extremely solid. This is the distance from here to there that the grill will slide in. I'm going to fill this with insulation, put the concrete board on top, and then make my measurements, working my way up to the final height of 10 1/4 inches right here. 54 and a half inches wide, 10 1/4 inches tall, and 23 inches deep. So once the concrete board is in, it'll just be easier to work my final measurements up, and then I can slide the grill in, test fit it, once I get somebody over here to help me slide it in. Okay, next up is cutting and fitting the piece of concrete board, and then putting the insulation in, and yeah, that's it. That's right. That's what's next. All right, this is what this stuff looks like. It's very dense. I'm not going to touch it again. I just washed my hands. It's not actually very pleasant to touch. It feels like sandpaper combined with fiberglass, and then clearly some kind of fiber ceramic, I guess. I don't know. It's got little crystal balls in it of some sort. It cuts fine with kitchen shears. And what I did was I just blocked in the ends here, and then I put an extra layer right here where this is to kind of protect against the fridge, because what I really want to do is just keep the heat out of this fridge area. Like I said in the beginning, it's an overkill, but I think that it's better than not doing anything, since we can. And then I'm going to leave the sides open. I just want to keep the top heat from making its way down into the fridge. And then also I need to keep this area open back here. It's just going to be easier to run wires when I do the electrical. I'd have to do the electrical really almost first, or drill holes. So I'm going to put the concrete board on top and be done with it. So I laid the concrete board in there on an angle slightly and cut both sides so that the concrete board is not square at all. It matches the back wall and it matches the front of the cabinet. And I wanted to just encapsulate that entire space. I don't want any heat to get down through that. So here's a problem that I ran into, and it was really a dilemma. I could not figure out why this happened. The whole thing got out of alignment somehow. Somehow it was just not level, and so I determined that it was because I had over-tightened the bracket in the back right against the crooked wall. It just took me a little bit of time standing there and looking at it and checking all these different spots to figure out, how did I get this thing twisted? So anyway, once I figured that out, then I started to measure up from the base of the concrete board to the finished height of the framing, because there'll be a piece of granite that's 1.25 inches in between the framing and the bottom of the grill. And I had to determine, where is the weight need to be on this grill? Is it on the concrete board on the base, or does it kind of hang in the granite? And what I determined is most of the weight is on the base, and that's why I put those 2 angle aluminum brackets in there, or channel aluminum angle iron. And that's what the grill will sit on, because when you put such a heavy grill, the thing must weigh 400 pounds, on concrete board, it wants to kind of sink and settle, and I don't want it to do that. I want it to sit, so I needed a little bit more support on top of the concrete board. Anyway, once I figured out the height I needed, minus the 1.25 inches for the granite, and then I took one big box beam and laid it across to get everything level, it worked out pretty well. Went ahead and built those 2 side arms that come out, and really the main purpose of those is to meet up with the bottom of the grill and support the granite that will sit on top of that. Once I finished this area where the grill will slide in, I moved on to the cabinet on the left where the side burner will slide in. And I used this one big box beam to keep everything level, and I knew I needed to come down 2 inches. So I went ahead and just taped it with, I thought that worked out really, really well for measuring down from a level top. And then I just cut that tape off later, and that became the top beam for this cabinet. I went ahead and bolted in this side area and started work on the back area along the column. Now, the side burner is going to be offset. It's not going to be centered. It's going to be slightly out, and it'll match the sink on the other side, and that gives just a little bit more space in between the grill and the side burner to put a spatula or tongs or whatever. And my dilemma here was where to put the cross members. So I didn't actually get to this video, but this coming week I will need to build kind of a box within a box so that the side burner has something to slide into, which is completely offset from the actual cabinet base, while keeping the door centered. So it's kind of like, or at least aligned on the left with the side burner. So it'll be interesting to try to figure out where these beams need to go within the cabinet to cause that to happen. But this came together, pretty well. The thing is super heavy, so it's not like you can just kind of leave it there or wedge it in there and work from it. Here, actually, I'm realizing that I need to move this whole side panel that I just built out a 1/4 inch, because the doors that I ordered, which are not here yet, would not fit in that little opening right there. So I'll show you that here in a minute. All right, I got to a stopping point here, actually a little frustrated. I'll show you what point I got to, and then that's going to be it for this video, because I can't decide how to proceed. I ran into a little problem, and I'll show you what it is, and if you have any suggestions, please put it in the comments, because that's going to be it for this week. I'll flip the camera around and show you what I'm talking about. All right, here's my dilemma. I actually have two problems. One is I'll need to bring this out another 1/4 inch. I made it so that the concrete board would fit right up against the wall, and then I could just tile everything. Well, I'm going to have to do kind of the opposite of that. Line up the aluminum with the end of the wall, and then concrete board all the way over to here, and then tile everything, because I need this 1/4 inch. I need 13 7/8 between here and here, and I don't have it. I'm a 1/4 inch too narrow. So I need it. I'm going to take it from right there, and then the finished cabinet will hang over the deco drain by about a 1/4 inch when it's all said and done. Maybe as much as a 1/2 inch, but I think that'll be fine. The real dilemma now is, and keep in mind I have to tear this out anyway to move it over. So because of this slope, I started over here in the corner and I got it within about a 1/2 inch, and that's really the lowest I could go. And then it ramps up because of the slope on the pavers to almost 4 inches. What that has caused is the sink to be at a great height, slightly low, but great for me, and the side burner to be too high. This is 41 inches or something. It's pretty high. I'm not a very tall guy, and that would make it difficult to use. So the alternative is to lower these two wings. So not only will they come out, but they'll be lower than the grill. And you'll end up with a piece of granite right here as kind of a backsplash all the way around. And you'll end up with the same thing on the other side. And I think that is the way I'm leaning, but I don't want to rush into it. I would have to come down about 3 inches. The other thing, and then how low would that make the sink? Would that make the sink, really low? The sink would be probably too low at this point. Maybe. I would just have to look at it and see. Or do I leave the sink there and do I just lower this? Lower the side burner side? Then it wouldn't be symmetrical. That might make me crazy. Well, like I said, I'm not going to rush into it. If you have any ideas, please leave it in the comments. This is it for this week. I think this is episode 3. And I'll post a new episode next Sunday. We'll see how much I get done. But got a lot done, actually. Got this boxed in, very strong. Got the insulation in to block the heat from the fridge. Insulation goes all the way through to this side. And it's very solid. It's bolted into the wall. You can see how unsquare this wall is. I can fit my fingers down here, but it's touching over here. And what I did was I cut the concrete board not square so that it fills up the entire space. Anyway, that's it for this week. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. See ya.